You can manage your porn addiction for the rest of your life. You can learn how to cope with your urges. You can learn how to cope with your triggers and manage this and basically be an addict for life. Or you can actually heal from this. What do I mean when I talk about healing from a porn addiction? Healing means that you lose interest in porn. It's not something that you stop yourself from doing. It's something that you just don't do. It also means that you can no longer get triggered. It means that you're not in a situation where you go, oh my God, I accidentally looked at something, some picture on Instagram and it triggered me and here's my addiction coming roaring back. It basically means that you can look at a pornographic picture or clip and it does nothing to you. Healing from this means that it's something you simply don't do. You kind of forget about it. It means that you don't do porn in the same way that you don't weave baskets, probably, right? You just don't. You don't think about it, and it's certainly not part of your identity to not do this. Porn addiction is a huge issue. At this point in time, most people, especially boys, get exposed to porn at a very young age, and it develops into an addiction or a problematic habit or whatever you want to call it for the majority of boys and men. You've maybe heard about this. It's quite difficult, or one of the difficulties of studying porn-related stuff is that it's very hard to find a control group of people who don't do it, especially males who don't watch porn. It's very hard to compare porn users against non-porn users because non-porn users are so rare. Porn has been widespread now for long enough that we've also noticed like, oh, this is a problem. This is not good. And we have the counter movement of NoFap. And the reason I've started this channel, I want to talk about this topic, is because I see NoFap failing the majority of people. And NoFap very much has this frame of obviously porn is the worst thing ever and rots your brain, etc., etc. And you have to stop doing this. You have to manage this condition. And you essentially become a lifelong managing addict. And you're identified with the act of NoFapping. You're identified with the act of not doing this thing. It becomes this huge thing. How long is your streak? And breaking your streak is terrible. And a lot of analogies from other forms of addiction, Alcoholics Anonymous and stuff like that, which in many ways makes sense, but in some ways also doesn't work. So right here, I want to offer an alternative. And just to be clear, I'm not saying that NoFap is bad or you shouldn't do it or anything like that. You might as well try. And if it works for you, that's great. But if it doesn't work for you, as I know it doesn't for many people, then here is an alternative. Okay, so how exactly does one heal from a porn addiction? What does this involve? Let me give you the 3 most important things about this as briefly summarized as possible. First, recognize that there's nothing wrong with you if you have a porn habit or even a full-blown addiction. This is not a case of personal weakness or a sign that you're a loser or anything like that. The truth is that our drive for sexual reproduction, our drive for mating, is the most deeply rooted, strongest drive that we have. After all, none of us would exist if we didn't come from a lineage of successful procreation, successful mating that stretches back in time. From a biological perspective, this is the main thing that we try to do. We try to stick around long enough to procreate. And this extremely strong drive, this deeply rooted natural drive, has been hijacked like never before. Listen, none of your ancestors lived in an environment like this. It is absolutely crazy how we have easy, fast, free access to these hyperstimuli, right? It's hyperstimulating in that what usually in the real, your brain is wired to like go out and seek this, and it is highly rewarding to see an attractive person and see them naked. That's like this huge prize that is usually at the end of a pursuit, right? A mating pursuit, a seduction. You usually have to put in a lot of work to get there. And so it's very, very rewarding to get there. Except that now you can get that times 1,000 at any moment on a device in your pocket. That is a hyperstimulus. Your biology, your body was not built to deal with this level of stimulus. But of course, it's not just that this stuff is available. It's also highly optimized, right? It's highly optimized to keep you hooked, to give you the next thing, to recommend the next video, to get you down the funnel. So this is completely normal. The fact that you fell into this habit and now it's got its hooks in your brain, this is not your fault. And if you have a porn habit and your granddad didn't, it's not because he was a better or stronger man than you. It's because you live in this absolutely insane environment. Number 2, it's a coping mechanism. Like any addiction, you're doing something that is harmful to you. And even if you want to stop, you can't get yourself to stop because part of you sees this as the less painful, the better alternative. You're basically doing this to avoid something. You're maybe also doing this in order to like self-regulate and deal with some kind of pain or distract yourself from something you don't want to deal with. So you discover porn because you have this innate mating drive and it gets hijacked by porn, but then the porn itself gives you an experience of distraction and relief and pleasure that you come back to again and again, and you are basically avoiding something or you are soothing your own pain in some way. In order to heal the addiction, you have to deal with this underlying pain. You have to deal with the thing that you're currently avoiding and running away from. And this is where the NoFap approach usually falls short. Chances are that if you've tried NoFap and maybe joined the NoFap community, you didn't encounter many tools for actually systematically dealing with the underlying shame and guilt and fear or other pain that you are currently avoiding through the porn habit. Now, it might be that there's some stuff that you're using porn to avoid that has nothing to do with sex and sexuality and intimacy and human connection and so on. But very likely that is where the pain lies. You crave human connection, you crave intimacy, you want to desire and you want to be desired. You crave this very important erotic way of connecting. And in all likelihood, you haven't gotten a lot of that in your life. And I'm addressing men here. I would say that it's very likely that you have been absolutely starved of a certain kind of attention and connection and love. It's very likely that you lack a certain kind of nourishment in your life, which is a kind of feminine energy nourishment, which is both on the sexual and non-sexual side, probably missing in your life to a big degree. And I'm addressing men here, men who are attracted to women, of course. But I think the same idea will also apply for other, configurations. I'm just going to come from a, heteronormative frame here. So as a guy who's addicted to porn, it's very likely that you don't have non-erotic feminine nourishment in your life. Maybe all the women you interact it's like you're always trying to pursue them. You're sexually, right? So it's either you're trying to date them, or you're dating them, or you don't have any contact with them. So you don't have another source of this kind of just the feminine element in your life. So that's something you're starving for. But then there's also the sexual side, which again, most guys don't have a healthy and playful way to like flirt with women and to kind of feed that natural desire of being in pursuit of the mating game, right, of interacting with women. You probably, again, in a state where this is high tension, it's very high tension. You have the experience that if you're attracted to a woman, it's kind of a problem because it's this all or nothing situation. If you express your attraction to her in the wrong way, then you're a creep and you get rejected and it's horrible and you're afraid of potentially like public humiliation and accusations and stuff if you do this wrong. And so that makes the whole thing very unpleasant. If it does work out, it's kind of a binary situation. She either likes you back and then you start dating, or she rejects you and it's somehow horrible. But what's lacking is some kind of a playful, relaxed way to be flirty and sexual and have this kind of interplay with women. And then even if you do have a girlfriend or you're hooking up with girls or whatever, it's often tense and stiff and maybe even unpleasant because there's a lot of performance anxiety there. You have to be the stud, you have to last long, you have to do this and that. So even if you're sexually active, chances are you don't have a nourishing, playful, fun, revitalizing kind of sex life. There's all this tension. And all these problems around sex and sexuality and your desire. Now, a lot of guys also have loads and loads of sexual shame, loads of insecurities, loads of basically internal tension and strain and struggle when it comes to the topic of sex and sexuality and when it comes to your relationship with your own desire. That is a strained relationship. And all of this shame, all of these emotions, all of this struggle and this negativity, that's what you're avoiding. Porn gives you the relief, right? That's what you can do instead of dealing with all this shit. You can watch porn and scratch that itch. So the good news is that if you deal with all that stuff and get to the other side of it, that is where you no longer need or feel interested in porn. The bad news is you do have to go through all that shit. Which brings me to the third important point, which is that this is not an isolated problem. And I think this is one of the big pitfalls of dealing with porn addiction and thinking of it as porn addiction as a separate thing. It's like you have a headache and you go, okay, there's pain in my head and I want to solve this specific problem. So, can I put some cream on the spot that hurts and then it goes away? Or can I take the painkiller and that solves the problem? And that's it, right? We like to treat this as an isolated problem. My head hurts, fix the pain in my head. What we usually ignore is that, hold on, the reason your head hurts is because of the posture of your neck. You have too much tension in your neck. The reason you have all this tension in your neck is because you're sitting in a certain way. The reason you're sitting all day is right? And so in the end, it's like, look, you can fix your headache by just taking painkillers all the time, right? Manage the condition, or you can change your lifestyle. You can make changes to how you live, how you sit, how you work, what you eat, and so on, and you'll never have a headache again. But that's usually, we don't like to hear that because it's more work, but it's real healing. So with porn, it's the same thing. If you treat it as an isolated issue and you just say, I just want to get rid of the porn, that's not going to work. That is what leads you to having to manage the condition forever. If you want to fully heal from a porn addiction, you have to deal, like I said, with the shame and guilt and fear and tension that underlies it. And you probably also have to make lifestyle changes, because a compulsion, compulsive behaviors, and addiction is also just a sign of other things going wrong in your life. Like your whole system, if you treat your life, your body, your nervous system as a whole system, the fact that you have an addiction is a signal that there's stuff going wrong. And ultimately, if you fully want to heal from this, you have to make changes in your life. You have to basically go through a hero's journey, okay? You have to confront these demons. You have to go through a process of transformation and change, and it is going to be hard, but it's going to be worthwhile. That is real healing. Real healing is going through that journey, facing those fears, making those changes, and emerging a changed person the other end. This is possible, but obviously you have to say yes to the call, right? This is a call to adventure. This is the call that says, look, you have a quest. I'm basically here to tell you there's a quest that awaits. You thought that your porn addiction was just a separate problem that you can solve. I'm saying no, there's a whole adventure. There's a whole quest you have to go. There's a dragon you have to go slay. And if you do it, you will transform as a person. You have to be willing to make those changes. You have to be willing to grow and change as a person. And if you are, and if you can say yes to this call to adventure, then I am here to help you go through that transformation and fully heal from your porn addiction. So let's start with this. If you're seeing this and you're saying yes to this call to adventure, leave your questions and comments below. I'm going to answer every comment on this video.